പൊന്നമ്മച്ച അങ്ങനെ നടക്കുന്നു.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome here to Cape Breton University, and welcome to the Father Greg MacLeod Lecture Series, sponsored by the Newman Society, which Father Greg wanted to start, and CBU Chaplaincy. I'm Father Doug, chaplain here, and it's wonderful to be able to accompany the students and to be with all of the people from the community, which Father Greg really wanted to enhance, a link between CBU and the community, and to really build bonds. Some of us are not able to be present physically here, so they're able to watch, and we welcome them on Instagram Live. For those who would like to watch the lecture in the future, you can watch it on YouTube in a few days. The Newman Society YouTube page. There's refreshments to help yourself, as well as washrooms just down the hall to the right. And there'll be a Q&A after the lecture. And consider leaving your email address if you'd like to be informed of future Father Greg MacLeod lectures. And immediately following this, you'll see little pamphlets. If you'd like to have Lisa speak at one of your events, there's some pamphlets outside and how to get in touch with her for your organization or group. And no further ado, I'd like to invite up a student who is now working on her master's degree here at CBU. She spent a few years with us in CBU chaplaincy as a student campus minister, and she worked with Lisa in the past on the north side, and so she's going to be introducing Lisa and reading some of her biography. And so I welcome up now Paige Cox from North Sydney.
This semester, our lecturer is Lisa Power from Father Greg's hometown of Sydney Mines. Her moving lecture is entitled, Just for Today, How Living Just for Today Makes Our Lives. An honest path through addiction and mental health. How giving up a child at 16 started her on a path to overcome the past that had her in its grips. She promised her daughter that one day I will meet you again, and you will be proud to call me your friend. At 38, she married, had a child at 39, and 4 more kids in her 40s, and is now a teacher, author, and will share her inspiring true story. Lisa Power shares her story about growing up, struggling with mental health and addiction that swirled around her immediate family with relentless, never-ending battery. Her teenage years may have appeared to be fun and normal to some people who knew her, but the ones closest to her were concerned. Living in group homes and giving up a child for adoption at age 16 is what put her on the path to do better, promising her daughter that when they met one day, she would be a friend to be proud of. Through many hardships, trying to get her life together, enduring way more punches than she ever thought she would, she refused to give up. Graduating high school at 20 in Sydney Mines, that same year she found spirituality in California. It wouldn't be until she was 38 that she would be blessed with a husband and then 5 children. She continued to trust in the timing and will of a higher power. Through many ups and downs, Lisa has finally realized that part of the plan for her life is to share her story. She has written a book that is submitted for publishing called Promise to Power. The promise she made to her daughter gave her the power to change. Lisa worked in Ontario group homes, got her Master of Science in Teaching from State University in New York, and moved back home at age 38, where she met Eric. She is now a teacher in the CBRN and a motivational speaker. What does Just for Today mean to you? Please welcome Lisa Power.
Hi. I'm honored, thankful, humbled to be speaking to you all today at this Father Greg MacLeod Lecture Series. How does thinking just for today make our lives? I'm going to share 4 parts: my childhood years, my teen years to adulthood, finding recovery, and then starting to see the big picture. So my childhood years. I was born on a military base in Germany. My father was in the army, and my mother had another infant. Well, she had my brother, who was a toddler at the time, the 2 of us, and Dad was gone all the time. He was drinking, and he was with his brigade, and they, so she was by herself a lot, and so she spent 3 years there, and they finally were getting stationed in New Brunswick. So she, the flight was booked, and they were moving back, and Mom's at the airport and waiting. She's with the 2 children, and Dad's not there. So he shows up about a half an hour before the flight is about to leave. So here she is, flying back to Canada, flying into Halifax, taking the train from Halifax to Sydney Mines. Her family's all excited, they're back, they're having a welcoming party, and Mom's a little upset that Dad was hardly ever around, but she's very happy to have her family around again. We ended up moving to New Brunswick, CFB Gagetown, and Dad was cooking the military there, and it was tough for us because he was gone a lot and drinking, and Mom was left. Now she's another child. My brother Darren was born in New Brunswick. So the times where we didn't have food, Mom, because Dad was a cook in the military, Mom was able to go. We were able to go to his work, and the staff that worked there would give us something to eat, and we pack some food and we carry it home. We had to carry it home. We didn't have a vehicle. So Mom said, I don't remember a lot of this. Mom said we would have to carry the food, and we would come to the door, and our arms would be sore, and Mom would try to help us carry the food, and we'd get it in there, and but it wouldn't be before long where we would have to do this again. My mother would live like this for many years. So with my mother, she ended up becoming, she was bipolar, manic depressive. So here we have my father, who is an alcoholic, and then we have my mother, who is diagnosed bipolar. So she's asleep a lot and not able to get up and help us, so we're kind of fending for ourselves and hungry a lot, and people that knew her would come in to visit us, and they would see us, the 3 of us, but what could they do? They have their own families, so they have their own responsibilities. They feel like they should help us, and some do, like people are dropping off clothes, and people are dropping off food, and we're going to neighbors' houses to eat. So I want to share just a little piece of research with you. Dr. Fraser Mustard did a lot of research on the infant brain and how the first 2 years of a child's life is the most important in developing security and attachments, the senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. And if these 5 senses aren't securely, if you have insecure attachment at a young age, it's really hard for you to do well in school. He also talks about how the first 6 years of a child's life is the most important in developing a secure attachment. 1 in 4 children who are vulnerable, out of this group, these children, so that you have 1 in 4 children who are vulnerable when they start school. When I was about 7 years old, we moved from CFB Downsview to just north of Toronto. So we moved from CFB Gagetown to CFB Downsview. So now we're living in Toronto. So this is going on all the time. My father, he's and mind you, there's times where he's fine and he's doing weekends in jail. He's on interviews. He's trying to do better. He's jogging. He's spending time with us. He's throwing his stinky socks at us because he worked so hard that day. So it's not, but that's short-lived. And then he's back, and Mom is left to her own devices because she is trying to make the best of what she has, and she's trying to be a loving wife, but her husband's not there, and then you have us who are trying to fend for ourselves half the time. So school, I had a school friend who I would go to their house a lot and I would eat there. And I sometimes would have 2 plates of food. So one day I'm leaving and his mom's doing the dishes and I'm standing by where she's doing the dishes. I'm putting my shoes on, I put my second shoe on, and I touch all the dishes that are all stacked up and they all fall to the ground and smash, right? She looks at me and I'm like, sorry, and she didn't say anything. So school was about to start. I felt like I couldn't go back there anymore after that happened, and sorry, I don't know why my throat's so dry. So I go back to school, and her son is in my grade, and he was my good friend that I hung out with a lot that summer. So we're at school, and I'm going up to him to talk to him. He's got this new friend who he's talking to, who's also, a girl. And I'm noticing that she looks a little more put together than I do, that she has friends, that she's talking, she has her books, and I'm noticing that, you know what, I'm not quite like the other girls. I'm a little unkept. I'm a little, not put together as most girls are. And I'm feeling for the first time I really noticed that I was a bit different. So anyway, I hear over the announcements they're having track and field after school, and I knew I could run. We were outside all the time, running around, and we'd go on the subway, we'd run between the cars. Anyway, I joined the track and field team, and I was really good at it. The coaches thought I was really good at it. I was jumping over the hurdles. I was, I found my thing. So this is great. Anyway, a couple weeks after I'm on the track and field team, I find out that Dad has been discharged from the military for good. This time he's totally kicked out. We're going to move back to Sydney Mines, and our military life is over. So I find out too that I have to go back to grade 6, because in Ontario at the time they went to grade 13. So I'm finding out that I'm now going back to elementary school. So I'm going to go back to grade 6. I thought I was going to go to Sydney Mines Junior High, but when I went there, they said, no, you're going to go back you're going to go to YC Barrington. You're out of here. So anyway, I found this Just for Today poem on my dad's dresser, and it stood out to me. Here I am, I was 13 at the time. Just for today, I will try to live through this day only and not tackle all my life problems at once. I can do something for 12 hours that would appall me if I felt like I had to keep this up for a lifetime. That stuck to me, and here I am, just this young teenage girl going through a tough time, and I said to myself, you know what? I can do this. I can go through grade 6. So anyway, then I did grade 6. There's always one person I find, one person that's there. There was one girl in grade 6, but her and I had almost the same name, except it was a little bit different. My last name was Robertson, hers was Richardson, and if she's hearing this, she knows who she is. Anyway, because our names were so similar, she kind of took a liking to me, because people got us mixed up all the time. So I'd go to her place sometimes for lunch, and we kind of hung out, and that was great. I felt like that just one person can make your life better. Like one person smiling at you and liking you can make you feel like it's going to be okay. I ended up getting invited to this Northside Forum dance thing, and I get there, and there's this guy, Eric Power, anyway, there's a little bit more to that later on, but I thought he was really cute. I said, who's that guy? He's really cute, right? And then all the girls were like, oh, he'd never go out with you. He's got a girlfriend. I'm like, okay, whatever. So that's fine. So I enjoyed the evening. So times at home were tough, though. They were tough. So my mom's sister gave me this ring that no one claimed at Sobeys, and that she decided to give it to me because it was lost and found. No one ever picked it up. So I wore it to school, and this girl says to me, she says, oh, it looks like weird seeing you with a ring on. I'm like, what do you mean it looks weird seeing me with a ring on? Well, you look like the type that would wear a ring. So I was like, oh, that's not very nice. And anyway, the next day, my grandmother had bought my mother this yellow top that was like really puffy sleeves, and it was size 12. And so I didn't really know what that meant, but I thought it would probably fit me. So I wore it to school the next day, and I'm going down the hall, and my shoulders are like this, right? And I'm thinking I'm really cool. But I went in the bathroom, and I looked at myself, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing, right? So anyway, I didn't wear that to school again, but right? So then I ended up I found a couple friends who were drinking, and so we split a quarter round between the 3 of us, and that was my first time where I realized that I was trying to numb something. So, and then I found another friend who was taking pills out of her mother's purse, and so we would meet each other at school and just take a handful of pills, right? So, and then one day I'm at school, So not only am I there with no books, no pencils, nothing, I'm passed out at the back of the class, like I'm out. So she couldn't even wake me up. She had to get someone else to help her carry me to the office, and I don't remember anything until the next day. So anyway, you would think, and then I was smoking too. I was smoking a lot. Like at the time, both my parents smoked, and it was just something a lot of people did. So anyway, I started smoking a lot, and then I had a boyfriend, and my boyfriend, because of my life, here I am drinking, smoking, doing drugs, he just assumed that I wasn't a virgin. But I was. Anyway, so he forced himself on me. And him doing that to me, even if I wasn't a virgin, that's never okay, right? So he forced himself on me, and after that, I was off the rails. Now, I'm not going to school. When I do show up, the guidance counselor wants to talk to me. He's like, we gotta talk, you drunk, you high, what are you doing, right? So he sent me to see this counselor at the school, counselor at the hospital, Northside Hospital. And when I went there, she was smoking at her desk, and she was cursing and looking at me, and I'm like, because how do I come across really hard? Why is she looking at me like that and talking to me like that? So anyway, it kind of made me feel like I knew I was coming across. I was getting harder and harder and harder. So now the next part I'm going to talk about is my teenage years to my early adult years. So many of the people in this story, and even some people I just talked about, are no longer with us today because of suicide, because of depression, because of overdosing, because of domestic violence. And that was, I know, and I'm not the perfect speaker, but that was the main reason why I wanted to talk today, is because every time I hear about somebody who commits suicide, who overdoses, who has been killed because of domestic violence, or who is depressed and feels like they want to kill themselves, it really hits home to me, because I really believe that if you talk about it, and this is the pin, it's just for today. When you walk outside on the way out, I want you to take one if you want to. It says just for today. It has the Cape Breton tartan on the back. And I think if we live life just for today, and we really believe that if we put ourselves out there and do the best we can for ourselves, that things will get better. So here I am. So I broke up with that boyfriend, and now I'm gone for days, a blackout drinker. So I know the police are not allowed to talk about this, but they would pick me up and they knew my parents, so they would pick me up and they would drive me home, and they would, okay, Lisa, do better next time or whatever. And then there was this guy in town, George Bailey, I have to say his name because he's a relative of mine. But he'd be always in town, all crazy hours of the day and night, reading the Bible to people. And I'd sit with George, and we'd have a good old chat, and I was usually half in the bag or stoned. And I was like, George, what keeps you going? Oh, God, and he shared scriptures with me. And they're like, oh, and I was always like the look in his eye, and I'm like, man, like life sucks. Like, how do you, and anyway, so it kind of planted a seed, because I just felt like he had such a life about him. Anyway, so I'm home one day, and my dad's talking to this person on the phone. He says, I can't believe I got a sister in California. I'm like, you got a sister in California? He gets off the phone and he tells me that she's coming for a visit. So I'm all excited. You got a sister in California? That's just, So she came for a visit, and they're laughing and talking. She bought us sweaters that said Beverly Hills on them, and she brought Dad out. Like she was such a light, and it was so nice to meet her. I didn't want her to go back to California. So a few weeks after she left, she told me that I could go visit her in California. She bought me a plane ticket. But a couple weeks later, I'm sitting there looking at myself, and I'm feeling different. I'm looking at my hands, or I had like yellow all here and here because I smoked so much, right? Like yellow nicotine stains. And it was a long time ago, and it's hard to imagine that, but I was such a hard kid. I was really hard. So looking at myself, and I'm feeling different. I go downstairs, my dad made me breakfast. This was new. Why does Dad make me breakfast? Anyway, it was really good, but then I threw it up afterwards. Anyway, so probably see where I'm going with this. I put on some weight. I behaved differently. Mom and Dad made a doctor's appointment for me. Mom and I walked to town. I had the pregnancy test, and it was confirmed that I was pregnant. So I come home, Dad had found out that I was pregnant. He looked at me and I started crying. I was bawling. And he looked at me and said, I don't think I've ever seen you cry before. And I said to myself, I don't think I've ever cried before. Here I am, 16, I don't think I ever cried before. Every time I fell down, every time I got hurt, I don't think I ever cried. So that concerned me. So they want me to have an abortion. They decided that that was the right thing to do. I didn't know what to do, so okay, let's go. So my brother drove at the time. If you know my brother now, he doesn't drive. It's a sad story. I'll get there in a second, but he drove. So it goes to show you, he's God love him, really, seriously. So he drove me to the appointment in Halifax. I went in for the abortion. I'm sitting there, there's a lot of people there. I was surprised that there was a lot of people there. And the woman in front of me was her sixth time having an abortion. So, and I said to myself, if I go through with that, that's me. I'll be back again and again. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I went back out into the car and I said, I can't do it. I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm not doing that. So we left and we drove home. There was hardly any words on the drive home. And so my father was furious with me. He was furious with me that I didn't go through with the abortion. So now my dad, nothing, my father loved me. I think you guys all know that parents, he had been through a lot of his own stuff. So it's not, I love my dad. I know he loves me. I know he loved me. He had passed away. Anyway, so now he's dealing with this. He's got a daughter who's pregnant, and I'm trying not to drink. And my father starts taking me to parties with him. So I'm going to all my parties with my dad now, because to him, I'm done. Like my life's over, even though I'm pregnant, right? So anyway, I failed in school again. I'm 16, grade 8, failed again. So the school said, if you don't go to summer school for English in July, you're gonna fail. So I said, okay, I'll go. So here I am pregnant, living on Birchel Street in City Mines, walking from Birchel Street to Memorial every day for the month of July, and with my books. Now I'm carrying my books. So I'm walking back and forth with my books. Anyway, so somebody at the school must have said, that kid needs help. So their connections were made. I moved into the Salvation Army group home in Sydney. Major King was there at the time, and so I was watching commercials on TV about this home with a guardian angel, and I was thinking, gosh, I could really use a guardian angel right now, right? So I said to Major King, is there any way that I could move into that home up there in Halifax? So she made some phone calls and she arranged for me to move into this home with a guardian angel. I went up to Halifax on the train, and a nun, Sister Marguerite, picked me up. Sweet lady, little gray hair and little glasses. She's very sweet. She picked me up, and I tell you, those nuns were amazing. They really were. Like, I had no experience with nuns before, but they loved me. There was 12 of us there that were pregnant, and I was eating a lot of food, like a lot of food. It was every meal. They had like every meal, and even snacks at nighttime. Sister Joan Bernadette made these oatmeal raisin chocolate chip cookies, and she knew that I liked them, so she made sure she had them every single day, and I ate them every single night. I'd go downstairs and I'd have my milk and cookies every night, and I gained 65 pounds. So anyway, she also taught arts and crafts, Sister Joan Bernadette, so she's teaching arts and crafts. She looks at me one night and she says, Lisa, you have a light coming from you. You have an amazing light coming from you. And I was like, really? And I thought, oh wow, it kind of made me feel, it made me feel special inside that she said that to me. So I'm there at this group home, and Sister Judith Green, she sat down with me and she talked to me about giving my child up for adoption. And I thought, this is probably the best thing to do, because I have nothing myself. I'm barely making it myself. So how would I be able to keep this child and take care of this child? So my mother came up for a little visit. One of her nieces was up there in Halifax at the time. She came up for a visit, and she happened to be there, and it was meant to be because Mom hadn't been up at all, and she came up for a visit, and I happened to go into labor that night. I felt like that was God looking out for me, right? Because she was there. So I gave birth that night. Mom went back to Cape Breton the next day, and when she held the baby in her arms, she said we should keep the baby, right? but Mom had lost a bunch of weight. Mom and Dad had divorced, and she lost probably about 30 pounds since I'd been in Halifax. So I said, Mom, I don't think, that's the best idea, right? So, and thank God I did, because what I'm about to tell you about what I came home to is not good. So I stayed up there, and I just have to tell you this little story, just going back with the week, because it's just a funny story. One of my mom's cousins came up, so it's a second cousin of mine, and she took me out for supper, and she said, is there anything you need? Because I obviously didn't have a lot of clothes, didn't have a lot of anything. I said, well, I'd like to have a sweater. So she bought me a sweater. Anyway, and then she took me out for lunch, and we were talking, and Santa was going around saying, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. And I'm thinking, yeah, I honestly, she said, I wish someone would kill him, is what she said. and I thought, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, I wasn't feeling like I was in the Christmas mood at all, right? So, anyway, but she was nice to buy me a nice warm sweater, so I was very thankful for that. So, anyway, after I had the baby, I wasn't allowed to know her first name. I was only allowed to know her middle name, because if you know the first name, you obviously can't change her birth date. So if you know the first name, you could find them easily, and so it's identifying information. So you have to wait a couple weeks before you sign the papers. So it was December 17th, I had to sign the papers. And I felt like when I signed the papers, I felt like I was giving up my life, my new life. I loved living there. I didn't want to go. And now that I wasn't pregnant, I didn't think it was fair that I had to leave. But I did. So anyway, so Sister Marguerite, the same little one that picked me up, she was driving me home now, so she took me to the train station, and she waved me on the train, and she waved to me, and really sweet lady. So anyway, all these people were on the train that were going home for Christmas that were in university, right? So the conductor just assumed that I was going home for vacation from Christmas. So he said, what are you taking to school? I said, oh, I'm going to Mount St. Vincent, I'm taking social work. He goes, oh, good for you. Oh, thanks, buddy. So, I had to, what was I going to say to him, right? Anyways, I just made it up. It just kind of came to me. I didn't even know social work was a thing at Mount St. Vincent, but anyway. And so I go home. My family's not expecting me. They thought I was going to stay up there. Like, what do you think I'm going to do up there, right? So my grandmother, love her to death, she moved from Newfoundland at 16 and made a life for herself in Sydney Mines. So she thought I should just stay up there and make a life for myself. I said, well, what am I going to do up there and make a life for myself? And Mom had a new boyfriend. They had nowhere for me to stay, so I was sleeping on the couch. So anyway, both my brothers were in jail at this point, which is very sad. So my mother's new boyfriend didn't like me very much. So they weren't expecting me to come home. So he would call me a reprobate and an alcoholic and some other stuff that I won't even talk about. So, and Mom wouldn't say anything. So, and she feels bad for it now. Don't get me wrong, she feels bad for it now. So at the time, she when you think about it, Mom was only 36. She was so young. She was probably too young to even have, she had me at 20, so she was only 36 when this is all happening to me, right? So, I mean, it's hard for her now. She's apologized to me many times about these things. So, anyway, so here I am, I'm going into grade 9, right? So, I have this boyfriend who's also now, what am I gonna do? It's all I know. I have this boyfriend who, and I won't even mention his name, but if people from North City know who it is. So, Mom's now living in North City, and I have this boyfriend who is an alcoholic and doesn't have a job. So, like, that's all I know, right? So, anyway, him and I are getting drunk all the time, hanging out and whatever. But I'm still trying to go to school. So that's so I met this girl at school, and she had a daughter, not a daughter, she had a sister who her sister didn't give up the child, but she had a sister who had a child young. So when I told her what I had gone through, she hugged me and I cried. And it was just that one person again that happened to be there for me, right? And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have gone to school. Because here I am, 17, grade 9, right? So, 16 and then 7, pretty much. So it was 17 in January, right? So, and I hadn't had any marks from being up in Halifax. I didn't have any marks from that school. It was tough. So, the summer, I'm 17 now, and my older brother's living in Toronto, working in a shoe factory. And I was told to go up there with him and I wouldn't pass in school, so I went up there with him. And that wasn't good. All we did was drink our money. We got paid, we drank everything, and we ended up going to bars that weren't the right kind of bars, if you know what I mean, because that's the kind of bars he wanted to go to. And he had me hanging out in those bars. There was men that were hotels and cocaine. It was bad. It was really bad stuff. So, and I'm 17, right? So I called my grandmother up and I said, Nanny, I gotta come home. She said, there's nothing here for you. Make your life up there. I said, no, I can't. I'm gonna die up here. Like, I'm really gonna die up here. So I said, next paycheck I get, I'm buying a ticket, I'm coming home, and I'm not getting drunk. So that's what I did. So I came back, and the school, so now we're going into grade 10 at Memorial, and they said, you can't go to school, you have no marks from grade 9. I said, listen, whatever I gotta do. They said, if you take a trade, we'll let you come. I said, well, I'll pick out a trade. So I took offset printing. And school was tough. It was tough to go to school. The secretary at the school, I wanted to get a job, to get away from the house. So the secretary at the school made a resume up for me to apply for direct film at the mall. And she did a really good job making up the resume for me, which was great, because I had not a lot to go on. Got the job. Wow, right? So here I am working at direct film. But so I did make a promise to my daughter, right, that I would become a better person. And so that was always in the back of my mind. But when I got home, it was hard to, when you have no support, it's hard, really hard to make that happen. So I got the job at direct film, and so in my mind, I'm just gonna drink on the weekends. I'm not gonna do drugs. Everybody drinks on the weekends. So but every weekend I went hard. Like, I hit the bottle like crazy, right? So, and so here I am, going to school all week, drinking all night Friday night. When I went to work at direct film on Saturday, I was throwing up in the bathroom, coming back out and saying, can I help you? So anyway, one day I'm at work and I'm looking, so Sobeys is right there, right? So this guy comes in, he's tall, he's like 6'4", blonde hair, tanned. And I'm like, he is not from around here. Who is that guy? And then I thought, I bet you that's Aunt Shirley's son from California. I had forgotten all about that. Dad had a sister in California. So I'm trying to make the connections, like, where could they be staying at? So anyway, that night, I'm hanging out with Aunt Shirley and my cousins in California, right? Who would have thought that would ever happen? So anyway, so here the invite's still there. You can come to California. I'm like, yeah, sign me up, right? So anyway, so she took me in, right? She took me in. I graduated high school. So I'll just take a step back. So I did graduate high school. The marks were all 50s, all 50s. That was the best I could get. And that, I think they were just given to me because they all felt sorry for me, to tell you the truth. So anyway, so I have to just go back just a second. My graduation night, I asked my dad, can you please promise me that you'll be sober, that you can come and have the first dance with me? And he said yes, and he came. He was shaking, he was sweaty, but he was there. And I was so proud of him, right? Yeah. And John Ratchford was there, he took my pictures. That was a big part of my recovery too. John never gave up on me with going to ACA meetings at the time, right? So John helped me make a portfolio up too when I went to California, which is really nice, because it really picked up my spirits, right? Made me feel like I had something to offer. Made me feel pretty too, which I hadn't felt, right? So I'm in California, and my same thing is happening. I'm drinking every weekend, and I didn't know how to let go of that. So finally, so here we are onto the finding recovery and a higher power. So Aunt Shirley says to me, I would come in like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm working as a nanny in California. They gave me a Volkswagen Bug to drive, so I'm driving that around. So on the weekends, I'm driving around. And I have a little bit of I don't know if it's from Dad, but just a lot of like energy. So I'm working Monday to Friday, working at babysitting kids. Saturday I worked at Oak Self Storage, and Sunday I worked at Eddie's 50s Cafe. But I still partied hard Friday night and Saturday night. Like, I was just you know. So Sunday mornings, Eddie at Eddie's 50s Cafe, he knew my Aunt Shirley really well. So I'd come in and he'd go, you gotta call your aunt. Because I would just literally go from the party to the cafe, right? That I wouldn't even call Aunt Shirley. So she says to me, you have to get help. You have to, and I knew deep down I did. I knew that as much as drinking on the weekend sounds great, I knew that it was too much. So here I am, and Aunt Shirley said, if you don't go to the AA meeting, I want you out of the house, is what she said to me. So I decided to go to a meeting. And the first meeting I went to, I don't want to go over my time, the first meeting I went to, I felt at home. I really did. I felt at home. I felt like everybody in there could relate to me, and I could relate to them. And I was thinking to myself, where have these people been all my life, right? So, and then I go to the back of the room, and I see all these pamphlets, and the Just for Today pamphlet was there. And I still had the one with me that Dad had put on the dresser 8 years ago. I still carried that with me the last 8 years. So I put both pamphlets together, and I sent them to Dad, thinking, this is a sign, Dad, you gotta get sober, you gotta do this. So then I put a lot into AA. I went to a meeting Monday night, so Monday through Friday I went to a meeting every night, and then Friday night I went to 2 meetings. Saturday I went to 4 meetings. I went to 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock. So Saturday I went to 4, and then Sunday I went to 3, right? So I was going to like 10 meetings or more a week. And I didn't even know that you're supposed to do 90 meetings in 90 days. I covered that, but I just covered that, right? I felt, and I had, so, and I know you see me now, but, and I still am nervous, you could probably still, but I was way worse then. It was really bad. The first one I asked to sponsor me, I was asking her and I was almost groveling and shaking and crying, and that's how broken I was. I was so broken. So she agreed to sponsor me, and then she went through a nervous breakdown. So right after she agreed to sponsor me, she was speaking at Acton Rehab just outside of Los Angeles. She picked me up in her Porsche. She lived in a, you would call a mansion, multi-million-dollar home, whatever. So these are like the area we lived in California wasn't like, it was a pretty affluent neighborhood. So here she is, she picked me up in her Porsche, we're driving down the freeway, we're going to this rehab center with palm trees and beautiful resort type thing. And she's telling me that she's, going through a nervous breakdown. Her and her boyfriend were breaking up and stuff. So she couldn't sponsor me anymore. But like in a lot of people's eyes, people would think that people, with money, that's everything, and it's not. I learned, I love California, but I learned very quickly that money does not buy you happiness, right? So anyway, I found myself looking for a new sponsor. My new sponsor, she's, we're talking about my character defects, and she said, you have more character defects than anybody I've ever met. And she sponsored a lot of people. And I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to be a compliment or, but, So anyway, it was really like, and then I went to this meeting, we call it Drop the Rock. And it really, I was searching for something else. Here I am drinking. I didn't know how to eat properly. I became bulimic. So where I'm working at the looking after the kids, the lady who was running the house, she's like, their mother, she said, the kids are eating a lot of food now. Do you want me to put more stuff on the list? I'm like, yeah. So I was eating and throwing up at work, right? I didn't know how to manage my emotions, didn't know how to manage my addictions, drinking a lot of coffee. Anyway, so this girl in the neighborhood, I invited me to go to her church. And I was right away, I'm like, no, they're all hypocrites, not going there, don't want to go to church. So she said, well, we have an AA Bible talk at our church, because I was telling her about me going to AA. So I decided to go. So when I went, I started studying the Bible with this. It was a non-denominational Christian church, but I started studying the Bible, started seeing that God had a different plan for me. And then I got baptized with that church. I quit smoking the day I got baptized, which was the feat for me. But the coffee thing took a while, but the coffee became my vice for a very long time. So anyway, I ended up moving back to Toronto. I know there's a few minutes left, I don't want to go over, but I moved back to Toronto. And I moved to Toronto with the church. They had a person there that was from Nova Scotia, and she let me stay with her, and I got a job in cosmetics. And when I'm working in cosmetics, my older brother, he's living on the streets in Toronto. So the security guards, I hear the security guard saying, shh, there's somebody coming up to the cleaning counter. and I look up and it's David. So he's a mess, right? He's weathered from the elements, living on the streets, and my counter manager let me go for coffee with him. We had a talk, and I said, you can't live with me, I'm living with girls, I can't, and I ended up financially had to stop giving them so much money a month, because within another week, my other brother came, same thing, so they're both living on the streets together. They're telling me all these stories about them living on the streets, and they went to the Metro Turning Point in Halifax, and they got turned away because they were drunk and they had to sleep in the clothing bin, and so this is, so if I didn't, it was hard to put myself first, right? Because I know I feel like I go over time, but when I was 26 years old, I didn't want to do it anymore. I went through a lot with my brothers, and when I turned 26, I didn't want to do it anymore, and I had a dream that my grandfather came to me and he said, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And I sat there and I cried, because he was the person that believed in me all those years, Poppy Evans. He was the one that believed in me all those years, and it was unconditional love. And for him to say that to me, it meant everything to me. And I said, you know what, everything's going to be okay. Just for today, I will try to strengthen my mind. I will study. I will learn something useful. I will not be a mental loafer. I will read something that requires effort, thought, and concentration. So, my friend from Nova Scotia that was part of the church, she said, you should go back to school. You should apply to university or something. Applied to Ryerson, and I didn't get accepted. When I went down to find out why, they laughed. They said, did you see your transcript from high school? I was like, yeah, so that's why I didn't get accepted. So anyway, I ended up going to college. I went to George Brown College, and I took child and youth worker. And working as a youth worker really helped me a lot, because they could relate to me and I could relate to them, and I wasn't that much older than them. So in helping them, I was helping myself, and I did that for years. So just before I'm going to move on to starting to see the big picture, because in Ottawa, I was running a foster home in Ottawa, and that was my favorite job, by the way. I loved running the foster home. Those kids knew I had been through a lot like they had been through, right? And they could relate to me and I could relate to them. So, and in my mind, I was never having any more kids. I wasn't meant to have more kids. I'm not going to do that. I went through a long period of my life where I told people I was married to Jesus and wore a wedding ring, because I was having none of that, right? Really, it saved me a lot of pain of getting checked for medical things. Do you have anything? Am I going to catch anything? It saved me from all that stuff, right? So then I'm coming home. I'll just share quickly because I'm running out of time, but
You're fine, Lisa.
Okay, yeah? Okay, sure? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll have to share this last piece that I was going to skip because it's kind of important. So I'm running the foster home. It's 2007, and I'm just graduated from Ryerson, who didn't accept me all those years ago. I ended up transferring from child and youth care program at George Brown College I had to get something from Ryerson after them refusing me, right? So anyway, so I got accepted, and my first degree was from Ryerson University, and that was 2007. And that same year, I ended up meeting my birth daughter. So yeah, so it's exciting. She was 20 years old, and I was talking to the adoption worker on the phone, because we had to, whenever I sent her a gift, I had to go to adoption services, and then I had to go to her house, and I wasn't allowed to know where she lived, but the worker told me her first name by mistake, and she couldn't take that back. So I'm like, within 5 minutes, I found her online. So I can't take that away. I know where she was born. So anyway, one of my cousins, her and I went to meet her mother in Halifax. They live in Bridgewater, and it was it made me. That was like the tip of the iceberg. That was not the tip of the iceberg. It was the cream of everything. It was the top. It made me feel like I could move forward now. She's okay. She's happy, right? So, and I graduated university, and then I was still running the foster home. And then the following year, it was like I was able to think maybe, and I called my mother's sister up, and we were talking on the phone about my cousin's wedding, and then we were talking about Eric Power. Came back in the picture again. And then she said, well, he's home now, he's single. And I'm like, he's still single? And then she, well, you're still single too. I'm like, yeah. anyway, so then she said, why don't you hang out with him, take him to the wedding? And I said, well, I don't even know what's going on with him. She goes, well, hang out with him the night before the wedding, make sure he's all there, and then take him to the wedding. I said, okay, that's a good idea. But I was still feeling really I didn't know that he was going to be changed. I didn't know that he was going to be the one for me. I didn't know any of that. So I'm about to hang out with him, right? But I'm at my cousin's, and everyone's drinking, and I'm like, you know what? I deserve a drink. I deserve, yeah. So I had the beer in my hand, and then I get a ding to meet up with him. So, okay, I put the beer down, I'll go meet up with him first, right? So, anyway, he gets out of the car and there's this light coming up from behind him out of nowhere. And I'm like, that's weird. Almost like God was trying to tell me he was the one for me before I even spoke to him, right? So then he tells me that he's in recovery. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. Anyway, we hit it off. I knew right away, and he knew right away, which was, I never ever thought would happen to me. I'm 38 years old, right? So, and then when I asked him, he thought I was 36 because he didn't know I was 2 years behind in school. So anyway, we were talking to having kids, and I said, don't you think I'm too old to have kids? And he said, well, we'll let God take care of that. I'm like, that's a good answer. So we ended up going on to having 5 children in a row, right? So yeah, 39, 40, 42, 43, and 45. And everyone I had, I felt like there was something bigger than me pushing me to have these kids. It wasn't like I didn't have a choice. It was like God was telling me, you're supposed to have these kids, right? And then I'll just tell you briefly before we finish up. My dad, so my dad's going through a tough time. He's active in his addiction, and one of the last things he said to me, because we had to drive him to get a drink because he was shaking so much, and and the lady who served him, the waitress was bawling, serving him, because she said her father had just passed away the year before, the exact same situation. So Dad looked at me and he said, Lisa, don't ever end up like me. He knew I had it in me. He knew that I was like him, and I am like him. You know what? In my message today, the biggest thing I want to share with everybody is that you never know what anyone's going through, first of all. And second of all, if you want to take a pin on the way out, these pins say just for today on them, and it's the Cape Breton tartan on the back, and to remind people that to live just for today. You never know what's going on. It just takes one person to smile at somebody, to make them feel worthwhile, say a prayer for them, and really say a prayer for them, right? It's such there's too many people in our communities committing suicide and on drugs and feel like they have no hope, right? The cost of living is at an all-time high, but we can stick together. I watched a movie recently called Queen of Katwe. If you ever get a chance to watch that movie, we think we have it tough here. There's a lot of people in third world countries that have it way harder than us, so be thankful. Thank you.
Just before I invite Indu forward to give the thank you address, I would like to say that, Lisa Power doesn't have a PhD after her name. And normally for the Father Greg MacLeod Lecture Series, we always have a PhD academic, someone who's done all this expert research, high profile. And some were a little concerned, no one's really going to show up for this lecture, she doesn't have a PhD. Well, not only did you show up, but this, next to the lady from CBC Tapestry, this is the second largest lecture we've ever had.
Oh, wow.
Over 70 people here and many more online watching from home. And it is a powerful testimony. It speaks right to our hearts and it gives people hope. And so with that, Indu from CBU Chaplaincy will give the official thank you.
Wow.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Thank you each and everyone for participating in this lecture, and special thank you for our guest, Lisa Power, for sharing your truly inspiring and powerful journey. As your name stands, Power, you have very strong willpower, and your journey is truly inspiring for everyone in this room. And your courage to share all your personal struggles and your challenges, and to share your wisdom is truly inspiring. And as part of chaplaincy team, we would like to share a small gift from our side as a thank you note. So I would ask my ministry to give us gift. Thank you.
And now we're going to open the floor to questions, and Lisa will take any questions that you have. Just take them from your seat.
Any questions? Yes?
I was just wondering if you had any advice for somebody who has a family member who has addictions and isn't quite ready to get help yet.
Yeah. So I didn't share too much about my immediate family, but both my brothers are still in that situation. And it's hard. It's hard because you don't want to be codependent, and you don't want to do anything debilitating for your own health, right? So I think for me, what I've done is I've offered to take them to meetings, and if they're willing to come, and sometimes you go to pick them up, they don't get in the car or they don't want to come, or you can leave a pamphlet out for them to have a look at to see if maybe they're interested, right? And don't give up on them though. Like I think for me, it's always like my mother. She's doing better now than she ever has. She used to always be in the hospital for suicide attempts, and she hasn't done that in a few years. So, and that's I think that's through prayer. Sometimes it's all we can do is pray for them, because you don't want to do anything to debilitate yourself, neither. No. Right? That's hard. It's hard when it's your immediate family, because it pulls on your heartstrings. It really does. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions? Yes.
If there was reading material that you would recommend or suggest?
So one thing I didn't mention, I should have, is that I read this book called Release from Shame by Sandra Wilson, and that book changed my life. So she talked a lot about writing letters to the people that hurt you, and expressing how you feel to them, but you're not going to send the letters, but you just for your own expression and to share it with God, just to get the feelings out, because you have so many feelings about things you've been through and people that have hurt you, or even maybe people that you've hurt. And I think that book, Release from Shame by Sandra Wilson, amazing book. And then also like the Recovered Devotional Bible helped me a lot too. Yeah. Yes.
There's so many people you see on the street.
Yeah.
Who are addicted and homeless.
Yeah.
And it's coming up to winter.
Yeah, I know.
There's not in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
When it comes to housing,
Yes.
it's become so prevalent.
Yes.
In society, almost like, forgive me, they're disposable.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I know. And that's so my both my brothers live on the streets in Toronto, as I told you. And then they get kicked out if they're drunk. They're not allowed to be there drunk. And then if they fall asleep with or take their shoes off that you bought them, they might get stolen, right? So it's hard because it's an epidemic. It really is. And then now with the cost of living, I hope it doesn't get worse because people can't afford to rent, right? That's the concern, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's Souls Harbor and City Mines where my brothers go to. They go there. They're there Monday to Friday every day. And the food bank is great too, and there's connections to housing for people that want to be sober, right? Yeah.
Do you have a book coming out about it?
I do. So I wrote a book called not Release from Shame. I wish I wrote that, but no, Promise to Power. So it's, but I haven't published it yet. So I submitted to Nimbus, and they declined. But I think it's a religious. It's not religious, but it's because it's. So anyway, I'm resubmitting to Boulder Books in Newfoundland and Breakwater Books, and hopefully they'll accept it. So you can keep me in your prayers for that to get published.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
What was the other book you mentioned there, if you were?
Release from Shame.
No, was there another one?
Oh, the movie. The movie?
Oh,
The movie. Queen of Catweed. Queen of Katwe, is that, so the movie is all about, it's in Uganda, and the movie is all about a young girl, and she, Fiona is her name, and she's really good at chess, but her mother's a faithful woman, and the mother sticks by her faith. They live in like boards, right? And this is going on today in Uganda. This is how they live. So the mother sells food for them, and then the son she never wants him to get hurt, so she won't let them do anything active because she's afraid if they break anything, she can't afford the hospital. So the brother gets hit by a motorcycle, and he ends up in the hospital. So now then they lose their home because they can't pay the rent. She actually leaves the hospital because she can't afford for him to stay there anymore. And he has this injury that he had sewed up without any medication because they couldn't afford the medication. This goes on today, right? This is so sad. So anyway, the daughter, Fiona, is really good at chess. So she says, Mom, she ends up doing so well at chess that she buys her mother a house. She wins all these prizes. It's a true story.
Wow.
It's amazing. Right? So anyway, it inspired me. Like that inspired me. Like, that she could come from that, right? Like, I think through faith anything is possible. I really do believe that. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you.
I know you and I have had this conversation before, but
Yeah.
do you feel, as you are a teacher now, you and I work here in the school board, your past, your story and everything, how do you feel it reflects on how you interact with kids that may be in the same situation, or like similar?
Yes, I know what you mean. So as a teacher, I don't get too caught up in the students that are acting up a little bit. Sometimes I feel like it's payback, but that was me. But I really have a heart for them because they're going through some stuff. Yeah. And if I'm at a school where they don't have served breakfast all day, I'm like, you should be served. I wish I had a breakfast program, But no, and I think they can tell. I think students can tell when you believe in them and you don't judge them, right? I'm not talking behind their backs. I'm not judging them. I'm not judging anybody because we all have our struggles. No matter who your parents were, no matter what your house looked like, life is not perfect, right? Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
So what grade level do you teach?
I teach an elementary endorsed. I'm a substitute teacher, so yeah, I don't have any connections to get a full-time job.
Yeah, so you would change schools?
Yes, I work different places every day. Yeah, I did it a couple terms, but the funny thing is, just not to get too talkative, but when I was 36, I worked on this research project that was talking about how employers don't want to hire people over the age of 39, and then I became a teacher at 39, which is ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Any more questions?
Well, hopefully if we get enough likes on this YouTube lecture, you'll get a full-time job. I think Cape Breton students would be blessed to have you, as would the community in which you teach us. So let's hope that happens for you. I think you deserve that. And she's an ordinary person. And Father Greg, who wanted this lecture series, he was for the working man and the working woman. And both of them come from Sydney Mines. And we're delighted. We rolled the dice having a working person, not a PhD, and I think it turned out pretty good.
Yes.
And so maybe this is something for our lecture series to consider for the future. And if you would like to have Lisa Power to speak at your community event, church event, whatever it may be, she is a guest speaker. And there's little pamphlets that you can get at the door with her information on it. And also you can get the Just for Today pin, and for all of us to just make it through today. Don't worry about tomorrow. That'll take care of itself. Thank you all for being here, and God bless you.